find out more about 50 things to do before you're 5 and the role that this initiative can play to support early language development and early cognition. I'm Chris Bunting. Thank you so much for giving up your time this afternoon to come along and find out more about 50 Things. I'm director of Bradford Birth to 19, and that's the organisation that stands behind 50 Things to Do Before You're 5. I'm going to say a little bit more now about 50 Things, and then I'll hand on to some great speakers that we've got this afternoon. We're welcoming Amanda Waterman from the University of Leeds, but also the Centre for Applied Educational Research, and she'll be talking about the connectivity between 50 Things and early cognition. We've got really pleased to see Victoria Wadsworth, who's coming along this afternoon to talk to you from her perspective, both as a mum, but also more importantly, I guess, anything is more important than being a mum, in her a professional capacity as being a speech and language therapist. And Chris Barton also got to contribute this afternoon, talking about language development again, and a particular focus upon young children with special educational needs and disabilities, and looking at the work that's been done in Cambridgeshire, one of our partner 50 Things to Do Before You're 5 local authorities. Okay, so I'm moving my screen handily to one side so I can see what I'm going to say. Let me just tell you a little bit more about 50 Things to Do Before You're 5. It's an initiative, very proudly, that's based upon the practice of St Edmund's Nursery School. And that was, about 3 years ago now. We were grant funded and launched the 50 Things to Do Before You're 5 initiative. And first of all, that was about us trying to reach communities in Bradford. And really 50 Things to Do Before You're 5 is a bucket list. It's providing suggestions, 50 of them, for parents, suggestions of low cost, at all times fun activities for them to do with their children. It's a multi-platform offer, localized for your region, an app, a website, some other promotional materials, and some social media campaign support. And it's something that local authorities work with us to develop in their local area. And it has a number of really important benefits. It is a multi-platform offer. It is also an offer that supports a range of outcomes that are really very important for young children. I was listening last night and significant BBC coverage around early language development and the significant impact that COVID has had upon children under the age of 5. And 50 Things to Do Before You're 5 is very significantly in that space, really trying to provide through opportunities, through play, increased opportunities for children's language to develop, supported by their parents. Effectively, what we're offering them, our parents, is the opportunity to do things and wrap up those things in serve and return conversations, which are going to have all sorts of benefits. And Victoria will pick up some of those threads later on. It's also about by I suppose supporting young children to be active. It's very much about trying to improve early health outcomes. Bradford, like many other areas across the country, is quite concerned about its early, I suppose, childhood obesity figures, coronary and respiratory health, I suppose, challenges in those areas, and young children's mental health, and also kind of early onset diabetes as well. And 50 Things, active lifestyles, is a really important solution to support early health. I'll allow Amanda to talk much more about cognition, but we are very much hoping that 50 Things is going to play a role in supporting metacognition, self-regulation, and all other kind of like ways of describing children's mental well-being. It is a really positive offer to families, a really positive offer locally to support COVID recovery. the information that we're getting back from the PVI sector, from the local authority, from health and from schools is that they are concerned about young children's development, how they're arriving in school. 50 things to do before you're 5 can play a significant role in driving forward school readiness. Best thing to do if you want to find out more about 50 things to do before you're 5 is to download the app and have a look, and it's available on the App Store and Play Store for you to be able to pick up and have a look from today. I know there are colleagues in the room who are wanting to find out about 50 things or more about it for the first time. And there are, much more experienced partners who've come along to the webinar today who are in areas where we're already working. 50 things to do before you're 5 started off in one school, rolled out to Bradford, and we're now working, by the summer, or will be working with 17 local authorities. Over 500,000 children will be within the reach of 50 things local areas, and that's 17% of the England's under 5 cohort. We've got up and running projects in Cambridgeshire, Southwark, East Sussex, in all of West Yorkshire as well, and I'm really proud to see some of the fantastic work that's being done across England. This is what you get, a local authority gets. Moving from left to right, you have your 50 things to do before you're 5 app. Some examples there with a pull-up banner and the call the fridge door or the back of the kitchen door poster, the practitioner card packs, and the website are the promotional collateral that each local authority gets when they buy into 50 things to do before you're 5. But they're not the things that you get on the screen there. They're absolutely localized to your area. So it's your children, your buildings, your parks and wild spaces, your bridges, your museums and galleries, which are celebrated within your own app and own website and own promotional materials. It's a secret to good community engagement in all our experiences, to make sure that this is an initiative, an offer of help and support, some ideas that are very much for you, featuring children from your area. The app also, as well as giving you these opportunities to promote your local assets, it is also using the events section of the app, gives you the ability to be able to promote events to app users. And also we're able to gather data when parents elect to give their postcodes into 50 things to do before your 5 app. We can look at the impact that we're getting on the ground there. We can see parents, which kind of parents are using the app, what they're doing, what they're completing, what they're not completing, and we can do something about that with our local offer, your local offer. Okay, so that's my contribution at the beginning to the webinar today. Gives me a great deal of pleasure to hand over to Dr. Amanda Waterman from the University of Leeds and Bradford Centre for Applied Educational Research. And I'll return to have a word with you at the end. Okay, we'll just stop sharing as if by magic.
Thanks, Christian. That's fantastic. So hopefully now I will be able to share my screen. So can everybody see that? Is that all working?
That's perfect, Amanda.
Great, lovely, thank you. Well, thank you very much for asking me to come and talk. I'm absolutely delighted to come and talk on this webinar, because I think the 50 Things Before 5 app is genuinely a really excellent and exciting initiative that's being rolled out. So obviously, cognitive health, by which I mean healthy cognitive development, is really successful to a whole range of developmental outcomes. As Christian said, I'm involved in the Centre for Applied Education Research, but my particular area of expertise is cognitive health or healthy cognitive development. And I'm an associate professor of cognitive development at the University of Leeds, and have been involved in the Born in Bradford longitudinal cohort study, overseeing all of the cognitive research in that for about almost 10 years now. And we know that there are really strong links between healthy cognitive development and lots of long-term outcomes like mental health and well-being. Obviously, school engagement is very strongly wrapped up with cognitive ability, cognitive development, but also there's really strong links between cognitive health and physical health as well. So it underpins and links to a whole range of successful developmental outcomes. So this app is going to be really important for encouraging cognitive health for all children. But one of the things that we are particularly concerned about and want to try and improve within Born in Bradford and within the Centre for Applied Education Research is children who are at some kind of disadvantage, where there is this inequality gap. And so obviously we know that poverty and living in disadvantaged areas creates this inequality. And we also know that children who live in poverty and disadvantage tend to have poorer cognitive ability. It's not an absolute, but it tends to, they're more likely to have reduced performance on the sorts of cognitive measures that we use. Obviously, any children with any kind of learning difficulty will have a range of cognitive deficits, which we want to try and support and help them to live with that in a positive way. And we know with all of those things, children living in poverty and disadvantage, vulnerable children, children with special educational needs, all of those difficulties have been exacerbated by COVID. And sadly, as I'm sure many of you will have seen in the media, that this inequality gap is getting worse, and COVID has made it worse. So obviously we want to find things that we can do to give children the best start in life, and this app is genuinely a fantastic thing that you can do with children to make a difference. So this is where, perhaps if I go into slideshow, it will help, because I'm not actually in slideshow, and then it will let me click on. Oh, there we go. Excellent. So just to go into a little bit more detail about some of the things I've just talked about in that introductory slide. So I've talked about cognitive development or healthy cognitive development, or generally. One of the areas I'm really interested in myself as a researcher is working memory. And working memory, for those of you that aren't familiar with the term, is a bit like our mental notepad. So it's where information goes in to support the task at hand. So it's where we hold on to and store information that we need to access immediately for the thing that we are doing. And therefore, it is absolutely essential for learning, because if you are listening to your teacher give you a set of instructions, or your carer, your parent, or you are trying to complete a task, you have to use your working memory to hold on to the relevant bits of information or the data or information that's coming in, and to manipulate and process it to do the thing that you want to do, however simple or complex that task might be. It all involves our working memory. And we know from other research, but we also know from our own research in Born in Bradford, that unfortunately increased deprivation is linked to poorer cognitive functioning, and including working memory. And the graph on the right-hand side of that slide there, I've just pulled out some of the data that we have for different groups of children, where we use different measures of socio-economic position, sort of standard measures that are used in the research literature. And we can then group children. And two of the groups are two sort of more extreme groups are the children we call from our most deprived areas or communities, and then children from the least deprived, which are the two things that I've highlighted there. And you can see that when we're looking at this performance on a working memory task, where WM stands for working memory on that graph, the children from the most deprived communities are performing less well. But to put that in context, children of the same age between the least and most deprived communities, that difference in performance is the equivalent to a 1 to 2 year age gap. So if we look at performance across different ages, the gap between the most and the least deprived of the same age is the equivalent between the gap between children who are 1 to 2 years apart. So obviously it's quite a profound difference that we're seeing there. So I also mentioned at the beginning, obviously there's living in disadvantage, living in poverty. There's also children that have developmental disorders or learning difficulties who are also need a bit of extra help and support to give them the best outcomes possible. And this is just to highlight, this is nearly 10 years old now, but the as was then Chief Medical Officer back in 2012 chose to write her report. They write an annual report on children with developmental disorders or learning difficulties, and basically said we are just not doing everything we should be doing to support these children. And I would like to think that in the past decade that might have got better, but honestly, I don't think that's where the evidence is pointing. And certainly now that COVID has had such a profound effect on children, I think this is likely still to be a difficulty. Any of you that are involved in CAMHS or have had links with CAMHS, child and adolescent mental health, will know that there have been increasing cuts made, for example, to those sorts of services. So I still think, even though this is nearly 10 years old, where there are still things that we could do more to support children with developmental disorders or special educational needs. And as I've alluded to already, we know that these difficulties have been made worse by COVID. We did a rapid report on the impact of COVID on health and well-being for the Bradford opportunity area, and found that children living in disadvantage and children with special educational needs particularly struggled during the pandemic, particularly during remote learning, with things like engagement, motivation, access to resources such as a laptop that's their own at home and secure Wi-Fi, etc. So just again, this sense of falling behind. So what we want to do some positive things, and I genuinely cannot recommend enough 50 Things Before 5. It's a fantastic resource to give children, all children, but particularly children living in disadvantage or who may be struggling for whatever reason, give them the opportunity for their carers and their supporters and their parents to help them have the best start in life. There are some really fantastic suggestions on this app, and they are, as Chris has said, it's tailored to the local community, really straightforward to do, low or no cost activities that can help children. One of the fantastic things about this app is we know from a wealth of evidence that the earlier you intervene, the better. So the fact that this is at an early stage in those early years is a brilliant part of this app. Cognitive stimulation, anything that stimulates a child cognitively is going to nudge them in the right direction in terms of having healthy cognitive development. So just to pull out some of the activities on the app, sharing books. I'm sure Victoria will be talking a lot more about some of these things, but reading to your children, even from a very young age, is fantastically important. Dressing up, so pretend play, very important in terms of cognitive stimulation and developing cognitive health. Rhyming and singing, all of these things will lead to improved healthy cognitive development in children and are on the app. There are quite a few things on the app about physical activity, and although my area of research is cognition, actually we know there's a huge link between physical activity and cognitive development. So for those, some of you might be familiar with the work of Piaget, who was a developmental psychologist. He's sort of probably in one sense our most famous person if you're a developmental psychologist, and his theory was very much that in our very, very young at very young stage, babies and young infants, it's about a lot of what they're doing is developing their core motor skills. They're developing the ability to manipulate things with their fingers, they're strengthening their core muscles to enable them to then go out and explore the environment. And Piaget said that it's that exploration and that physical interaction with the environment that is the foundation for our cognitive skills and our cognitive abilities. So encouraging young children to be physically active or to engage with, things like threading or beads or just getting their hands dirty in the sand or whatever, all of that exploration and physical interaction with the environment is foundational for then building effective cognitive skills and cognitive ability. And on the right hand side, where it says classroom activity posters. That was some work that some colleagues of mine have done, Liam Hill and Mark Mon-Williams and some other colleagues in Leeds, and who were also involved in Bourne and Bradford, where they showed, this is at a slightly later stage when children are at school, but children who are physically active during the school day learn better. So there's this real link between physical activity and cognitive development. And again, there are some fantastic suggestions in the 50 Things Before 5 app for simple things that you can do to get your child being more physically active, exploring the environment, which will improve their cognitive health and cognitive development. And as Chris has mentioned in the introduction, some of these things already, healthy cognitive development is essential for children being successful, short and long-term outcomes. So healthy cognitive development will help them be more ready for school. So there's this measure, we actually find ways of measuring school readiness, and healthy cognitive development is really crucial for children being ready and at the best possible point that they can to start school, which of course then leads on to better engagement with education and longer term educational success, and longer term both mental and physical health and well-being. So these are all very interconnected and hugely important. So thank you very much. I don't know whether we just take questions at the end, Chris, or and that we'll just go straight on to Victoria now.
I think we'll take any questions that there are at the end. Amanda, thank you so much for your contribution. We'll hand across to Victoria Wadsworth, our speech and language therapist, to talk now. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Thanks. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can
hear
you.
Great. I'll just share my screen. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that now as well.
We can. Okay,
great. So hi. Thanks, Rachel. I was just listening really intently about the overlap between cognition and language, because it's just fascinating how children do develop overall, and like I said, the overlap between these really important early development skills. So I'm Victoria. I'm a proud Bradfordian, and I'm really delighted to share my personal and professional experiences about 50 things to do before you're 5 today. 50 things. Okay, just move my slide on, just bear with, oh, there we go. 50 Things holds a really special place in my heart for many reasons, and I feel really privileged to have been involved in the journey of its development from back in 2017 when I wrote some resources for the initiative. I remember being in a meeting before this time and hearing about the idea of 50 Things from Christian and Andrea, and letting out kind of a little squeal inside my head and thinking how exciting the idea and the project was. And I was lucky enough to be involved, like I say, and at the launch event in June 2018 at the Houses of Parliament. And since then, 50 Things has just rightfully and deservedly grown and grown. It just seems to be growing from strength to strength. And I also feel that 50 Things connects me to other things that I love, which is why I've put this like heart emoticon in there, things that I'm really passionate about in my life and are really close to my heart. And firstly, that aligns with my role of being a parent, like Christian said, to my 2 gorgeous girls who are now aged 4 and 7. I clearly couldn't have any more love for them than I do. And 50 Things also connects kind of with my work as a speech and language therapist, and ultimately my belief that language and communication skills are so essential to learning and thriving in life. And this short presentation, I suppose, is a bit of a tribute to 50 Things. I'm going to briefly discuss how it links with the different roles in my life, and I'll give some examples of activities that I enjoy with my children, as well as some tips or ideas from a speech, language and communication perspective. So this is kind of a practical application of the 50 Things. So like all parents, I want my children to do well. I want them to be happy, and I want them to have friends. I want them to play games. I want them to have fun. I want them to be able to read and write. I want them to have adventures and tell me about them. I want them to say when they are upset, and I want them to tell me why. And I want them to be able to behave at school and to express their ideas. I want them to be able to manage conflict. I want them to have a good job. I want them to achieve. I want them to grow into strong and happy, healthy, confident, competent, caring adults, and much, much more. Now, you might think that I'm a demanding parent wanting all those things, but although long, I don't think this list is exhaustive, and that's what we all want for our children. I want lots of things for them. And I know that lots of the things that I want are out of my control. But I also know that in order for my children to do well and to have a chance, they need to have a really good, solid beginning, a start in life where they can learn and develop and build on the skills that they're going to need to equip them for the future that I want. And like I've already said, as well as being a parent, I'm also a speech and language therapist. And I know that an important skill, and for me, probably arguably the most important, that I can begin to support is to develop their language skills. And if you think about all the things that I've just talked about, me wanting for them, they need to be competent language learners and to have skills in language for them to be able to do that. So from being able to ask a friend to play, or understanding the rules of a game, to expressing an opinion or being able to read and write. If you can't say a sentence, you're going to find it difficult to write one. And these activities are all dependent on successful acquisition of language skills and being able to competently communicate. And then professionally, as a speech and language therapist, I know that from birth up until age 5, language is developed at a rapid pace, and more so than any other time in life. I know that the research shows that the quality of the experiences and the language exposure children access in the early years are so important. And this is because children need to be ready to build on what they've learned, so that then they can then go into school and they're well equipped to access education in the primary years and beyond that into secondary and then as adults in life. And we also know that these early experiences can have a profound impact on those later life chances. Research continues to evidence that the amount and variety of words that children experience and use in their own talking at age 5 years is a predictor of later life success in adulthood in all areas. So that's about the jobs that people might do, how much they might earn, how happy they are, how they're able to cope in life, how their general health and social and emotional well-being is. It's all dependent on these really crucial early years and the time that they can develop language and communication skills. And I want to also dispel a myth about typical speech and language development as a speech and language therapist, is that you don't need to be an expert to do it well, and that actually as a parent you are the expert of and to your own child. So the other great thing about language is it's all around us every day in everything we do. So you don't need special equipment to be able to do it well either. And that's why I think 50 Things Before You're 5 is so brilliant, because the beauty of this initiative is that all of the ideas and activities are perfect for developing speech, language and communication skills. And I really can't say how perfect they are. I can't emphasize that enough. So I've just, on that note, I'm going to share just a few of our 50 Things family favourites. So please indulge me. It's a bit of a photo album of some of the activities that we do. And I've also included some top speech and language communication tips to go with them. So I've just randomly chosen ones that that we've engaged in across time that I just think illustrate the importance of the skills and language so well. So the first one, creative junk, number 25. So we've recently moved house. Yeah, I know, during a pandemic, what a crazy idea. So we've had plenty of surplus empty boxes lying around recently. And I was really impressed when my 2 girls built their own tunnel out of the boxes, which is the top picture there. It was complete with like lift flaps and a T-junction. They went into different rooms. And they came up with this idea entirely by themselves, and it just emphasised to me how creative and imaginative children can be. Play is such an important skill in the development of language, and it allows children to talk about their ideas and verbalise their thoughts. And to complete construction tasks like this during play, that children need to explore and use a wide range of language skills. So they might need to negotiate and problem solve if they're working together. My children needed to do that. They might give instructions or make commands to each other. They need to listen and work cooperatively, and many more things. They had so much fun from it's that old adage of, you don't need expensive items for children to have fun. They ended up the picture on the left is where they painted their own houses and made their own house out of a big box too. So yeah, my top tip for this is to leave children to it, to create their own masterpieces, to just let them follow their own ideas, and to be completely child-led, and to stand back and kind of watch the mind-blowing ideas that they come up with, because it will be fantastic. So the Great Bradford Baking, number 47. We love to bake in our house, or rather we really love to eat the baking, and even when it's not cooked, we're quite, you know, we don't care. We quite like licking the bowls out. So in my experience, as soon as children are able to walk around confidently, they're kind of big enough and ready to get involved. We have kind of firm baking favourites in our house that we like to make, and are easy and always turn out well. I think that's always good when you're starting out baking with children. And as a result of baking now, my children also want to get involved in other everyday kind of things. So they want to start cutting the vegetables and helping prepare things like Sunday tea. In fact, my eldest daughter had made the Yorkshire pudding recipe so much by the time she was 5 years old that she knew how to make them herself, which again is a great life skill. My top tip for this one is baking. There are lots of fantastic verbs that you can use when you're baking and cooking. So this is just a nice one to maybe think about some of the fab words that you can use as you're talking through, and they're participating, and you can talk alongside the kind of things that they're doing. So whether that's cutting or mixing, stirring, sieving, rolling, whisking, blending, pouring, there's lots of really great verbs that they can use, or you can use a model for them to listen to as they're doing it. Woodland wandering is number 34. We really enjoy a walk into and through the woods, and never more so than in the past year during lockdown. And we always have different types of adventures each time we go to the woods. Sometimes we take a collecting bag with us, which is typically just an old gift bag, but big pockets obviously work well too. And we just use that to collect and hold interesting things that we see on the way. So it might be feathers or shiny stones or interesting coloured leaves. We don't really care as long as we can carry it, which is sometimes a conversation we do need to have, so we're not carrying too many big sticks. We bring it back with us, and the children just really love doing that. But my top tip for woodland wandering is really, it's a great place to listen to what is going on around, outside and in nature. You know, asking children to listen to what they can hear. And again, great for vocabulary and describing words. So shiny and smooth, spotted, speckled, bumpy, stony, spiky. Just some really great words that you can use as you're talking about and describing and exploring. And there's also so many other 50 things activities that can easily happen on the same visit to the woods, whether it's mini beasts and bug hunting, or shout and shh, or trip trap, or another favourite of ours, which is splish splash splosh, which takes us nicely onto the next one, which is number 26. My girls love to don their wellies and make it into a splish splash splosh time. They especially like to test the middle of the puddle to see how deep it is. And when it was icy a couple of months ago, they loved cracking the ice on top of the puddles and seeing how thick it was in the middle. Also, who could pick up the biggest piece of ice and how far they could carry it. My top tip for this would be, I've kind of found that splashing in puddles is good for conversation about maths and science. So just how deep or how shallow something is, how we might test it, how solid or soft the ice is, how we can crack thick ice, how does the water turn into ice, and lots more. Obviously, conversations at the level that the children can cope with. When children are little, the best thing that they can do is splash in puddles, you know, from a really young age. So that's a real hit in our house. Dressing up, number 15. We like a bit dress up in our house, and typically my girls have enjoyed dressing up in costumes, but recently my 4-year-old girl in the middle, she came down the stairs in my coat and hat. She looked hilariously funny, and she tried to pretend to be me in the words she was using too. I can't quite remember what they were, but I was kind of equally horrified and amused at the same time. My top tip for this is that there are no limits to dressing up, and there's no right or wrong ways of doing it. So just to kind of let children choose whatever they want when they're putting their outfits together, and it doesn't matter if it clearly doesn't match, or they've made like an alien outfit out of a tunnel, which is what my girls are doing on the right there. It just makes it much more interesting and fun to talk about. and really easy to do. My secret treasures is number 22. For as long as I can remember, my children have kept kind of a treasure box of interesting things or artifacts, interesting to them, I might add. Sometimes these have been favours from party bags, and sometimes something they've made or they've been given, or just something that they've found along the way. And this kind of eclectic mix of treasure makes for a fascinating haul, and is so interesting to talk about time and time again. My top tip for this is to kind of use the treasure items to help recall and remember special items. This links in nicely with the cognition that Rachel's just been talking about. So helping children to remember and recall and experience something. So when they got the special ticket on the bus, or when they made that special object, the narrative that we share when we're talking about things repeatedly helps us to remember the story behind the objects more easily, and then ultimately helps to cherish and treasure the memory forever, way beyond kind of having the physical item. Home from home, number 33. My girls like to play hide and seek in the house and often try and find unusual places to hide. So den building kind of seems to be an extension of this desire to find a special place to just be. Pegs, a large thin bedsheet and some furniture so that they can peg it to or hook it on or over are my kind of children's tools of choice. And once inside the den, they like to decorate the interiors with familiar cushions and favourite teddies. It really is home from home to them. Often dens are built on trial and error, so children find out what doesn't work as well as they find out what perhaps does work. And it's really great for children's problem solving in language and reasoning skills. And it requires kind of, typically maybe den building requires a kind of higher level language skills to independently do this, but we can start to do that with children together, and sharing that kind of just communication experience, and just enjoy spending time together and den building with them when they're really young. So my top tip for this would be to just support the den building together with them first, and if you're commenting and talking through each step of what you're doing whilst you're doing it, then eventually children get to, well, they hear the fantastic words that you're using as you're doing it, and they learn those words, and they'll be able to make their own dens in time themselves. So yeah, here are just, it just gives you a flavour of some of the really great things that are involved in the 50 Things Before I'm 5 activities. And just some family favourites of ours that have been inspired by the activities. I just want to say that kind of when I'm talking about exposing my children to different experiences, I'm clearly not meaning things that involve expensive trips to far-flung places, not that we can do that at the moment, but it's more about offering those everyday experiences that provide a backdrop for great interactions and opportunities, experiences that kind of provide the context for language learning, just like those in the 50 Things to Do Before You're 5. And I hope that by sharing what we do, you can see that what you do doesn't have to be fancy, and just talking about and sharing in everyday chores and cooking and cleaning and washing, shopping, gardening, just getting out and about locally, wherever you are, going to your park and having a picnic, visiting the library, traveling on a train or a bus, they all provide fantastic experiences to talk about. 50 Things has helped kind of inspire me as a parent about the fabulous everyday things I can do with my children. And as a speech and language therapist, I can recommend the activities to parents, as they are perfect for supporting early language and communication skills too. And I know that some early years settings have used 50 Things as an opportunity to link and share children's progress between home and nursery, and that they've embedded in practice some of the activities as evidence for observations for more curriculum focused requirements as well. I'm sure everyone kind of has their own ways that they can be utilised, but essentially they're just fab. And when we're participating in a wide range of activities with our children, and we're talking about what we're doing with them, then everyday experience is potentially a language-rich opportunity. And this provides an excellent foundation for developing great communication skills, and most importantly, for having lots of fun. And these experiences are priceless, literally, because they're free or of very low cost. So from both a parent and a professional perspective, there's nothing not to like about them at all, and they just get a big thumbs up from me. I think they're fab. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Okay, so we've got a message now from a message now from Chris Barton from Cambridgeshire. We're talking about a particular perspective on special needs. Chris is not able to be with us this afternoon in person, but we have a 5-minute recorded contribution from her, and then we've got a few questions to come back to. And so we'll ask that particular section to be shared now, if that's okay. Patricia, I think you should be able to do that. Super.
Thank you for inviting me to speak at the webinar today. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you in person. My name is Chris Barton and I'm an Early Years Advisor for Cambridgeshire County Council's Early Years Service and the project lead for 50 Things to Do Before You're 5 in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. 50 Things to Do Before You're 5 is a joint project between Cambridgeshire County Council, Peterborough City Council and the Fenland and East Cambs Opportunity Area, and we launched in December 2020 in time for the Christmas holidays to try to support families in accessing a wide range of activities despite the limited freedoms that COVID had given them at that time. We currently have around 2,600 users across a wide range of demographic areas. We range from Cambridge and Peterborough cities to very rural Fenland areas. The combined authority has around 52,000 under 5-year-olds. Cambridgeshire has a high uptake of early years entitlement and 96% of children aged 3 and 4 are in early education. In Cambridgeshire, our good level of development has been steadily rising. However, the gap between our outcomes and those seen at national level and with our statistical neighbour counties is not narrowing and the pace of improvement is slowing down. As a result of this, Cambridgeshire launched our 3-year outcomes strategy in the Early Years Service, which is designed to improve outcomes for children, especially those in vulnerable groups, and references the UNICEF conceptual framework for school readiness as our underpinning framework for the strategy. This encourages us to have ready children, focusing on children's learning and development, ready schools and settings, focusing on the learning and play environment, along with the practices that foster and support smooth transitions for children into primary school and advance and promote the learning of all children, and ready families, focusing on parental and caregiver attitudes and involvement in their children's early learning and development and transition to school. 50 Things, with its strong emphasis on developing children's vocabulary, which we know has a direct impact on children's reading in later life, supports all 3 of our main priorities by engaging parents and families of very young children to support their communication and language through a wide range of activities and experiences, and also supports all other areas of learning and development. 50 Things also tied in excellently with the opportunity area priorities. These are Priority 1, accelerate the progress of disadvantaged children and young people in the acquisition and development of communication, language and reading. Language acquisition, as I've already said, is closely linked to reading ability later on. Therefore, by introducing an app that supports language acquisition, children will hopefully have better communication, language and reading skills. Priority 2, strengthen the effectiveness of support for children and young people with mental health concerns and those with special educational needs. Through our SEND project, we are hoping to encourage settings to have open conversations with parents about things they can do with their children to widen the opportunities they are given. 50 Things to Do had clear links to both the opportunity area priorities for the Fenland and East Cambridgeshire opportunity area and the Cambridgeshire Early Years Outcomes Strategy. Both focus on communication and language, which the app has clear links to. Cambridgeshire's priorities also include engaging parents and home learning, and practitioners in early year settings can use the app to develop conversations with parents about their home learning. The opportunity area's priority around supporting children with SEND ties in brilliantly with our 50 Things SEND project. We hope that we will have some changes in children whose families are using the app frequently. We're hoping to see improved school readiness, improved parental confidence in engaging in playful family activities with their children. We'd like to see improved early speech, language and communication and oracy skills. And through the activities that promote it, better fine and gross motor skills and a change in behaviours, which will hopefully lead to better health, including lower obesity, coronary and respiratory fitness, and improve self-regulation, metacognition and resilience in children who are using the app regularly to take part in different activities to ones that they might have done otherwise. So we are training practitioners to use the app to support home learning and specifically to support language development at home. So far we've trained around 60 early years practitioners across a variety of settings to use the app by giving them practical ideas and examples, and by talking to them about the importance of explaining why they should take part in activities and why activities have taken part in the setting. The why section of the app is really useful to help settings explain this to parents so that they understand the value in the activities that they are doing. We've also supported grant applications from community groups through our Talking Together in Cambridgeshire project. This enables community groups to apply for a funding pot to run a project in their community and has wide links to different settings in Cambridgeshire, such as museums, art foundations and local toddler groups and the library service. This enables 50 Things to Do Before You're 5 to work in conjunction with community groups throughout Cambridgeshire and helps to raise awareness of the app through different groups. Our 50 Things to Do Before You're 5 SEND project is working jointly with the Cambridgeshire Early Years teaching schools to draw on their experience and add capacity for additional support. We've asked for settings to commit to implement ideas to reduce barriers for families of children with SENDs, to enable them to take part in a wide range of activities, and we're asking them to complete one case study relating to the project. The Cambridgeshire Early Years teaching schools are working closely with settings to support their knowledge and understanding in talking to parents to help them understand how their child can achieve different experiences within the community that they might not have otherwise thought that their child could do. We're hoping that the SEND project will help to reduce barriers and enable access to the ideas within the app for families of children with SEND. We're also hoping that it will encourage collaborative working between settings, and we're encouraging them to share ideas and good practice of how they've supported families to access different activities within the app. We're also hoping that it will improve staff confidence to engage in conversations with parents about how to support their children's needs at home. And as such, will improve parental confidence in ways to interact and support their children through everyday activities and how these activities can really support their children's development. We're also hoping that ultimately the project will become self-sustaining, as settings will then be able to support other settings not involved in the original project. I hope you found this interesting, and Andrea will be able to give you my details if there's anything else you would like to know about how we're using 50 Things to Do Before You're 5 to support our outcomes in Cambridgeshire.
That's great. Thank you very much, Patricia, for sharing that. I'm just we've got perhaps just a couple of minutes to look at some of the questions that have come up in the chat there, and it's a question for Victoria, and I'll read it. Should we always add commentary when we're as a parent or as a practitioner supporting children? Should you always add commentary to and words, or is there a place for quiet observations?
I like the term quiet observation. There definitely is a place for quiet observation. I hope that I haven't suggested that parents take over, because that clearly wouldn't be what I'd be suggesting. Typically, we kind of engaging in communication is key, but we don't want to take over that communication episode. So there's when we're thinking about language, it's useful to think about observing children and watching what they're doing and listening. So kind of owling is a word we might use. So observe what they're doing. What wait till they're kind of like looking at you to perhaps join in and listen to what they're saying. So you can comment, but be mindful not to take over. So there absolutely is a place for quiet observations and responding to what the child is doing, and letting them do that without being interrupted by lots of kind of language being streamed at them, so to speak. Does that answer the question? Was that you, Andrea? Yeah.
Well, yes. Yeah, a valuable contribution from Paul into this conversation is, instead of using commentary, using questions to help children develop their own stories and play, and encourage other words would be a better option, perhaps. Depends on the age and language, ages and stages. I'm guessing, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, just to go on the questions thing, I think we actually use questions a lot in our talk with children, and perhaps to kind of balance the questions and not just kind of interrogate children to kind of give us the answers for what we might be wanting, but to again use kind of language to comment alongside and help them to develop their own ideas, and use questions alongside that, but not overuse questions. Again, it's about balance.
Quite an interesting question, and tackle this directly, really, from, I'm just looking up through the chat there, from Cara, and it's about how you, the question very directly is, are you supporting schools in Brent? And we are working with schools in that sense, and families in the London area. Our one local authority area in London so far is Southwark. We've got some advanced conversations with home counties, local authorities, but Cara, it's a local authority offer, because such a large amount of work, it's not an unmanageable amount of work, but because it's a local offer for all families within a local authority area, within a council area, it's right that we offer that out to everyone in that local offer. Targeted approaches from the council, but also a universal offer. So really it's about a conversation we'd like to have with local authority officers about engaging everybody within a district, because the work that's put into putting your pictures of the children in from the local area, and the buildings and the local contextual information means that it's really worth its while for all schools in the local area to have that offer, really. We'll be in touch, Cara, and let's have a further conversation with you about that. Wondering if Andrea is picking up any other threads which are worth sharing. Andrea is our 50 Things to Do Before You're 5 project lead.
Yeah, lots of sharing of different ideas, and the way that many of the activities within 50 Things are not just one straightforward activity, but the baking is great for maths and fine motor skills. And we worked really hard to ensure that each of those activities didn't have a single outcome. There's a lot of overlap. So when we think about, you know, the opportunities for speech and language in woodlands on a wander, the way that same environment varies throughout the seasons in a year, the opportunities to explore a natural environment and be respectful of the environment was all very deliberate. So I'm really pleased that people are pulling that out. Paul's talked a couple of times about stories, and I'm a massive fan of children's own stories being recorded, as well as the fact that I would be a massive fan of having a go in your children's tunnel, Victoria. That just looked tremendous.
I did go through it, just to say. I did.
I know you would have done, you know, certainly.
Did have a go. It was good.
I think it's absolutely joyous when people are happy to share images of their own children undertaking activities that are within the 50 Things. And on our social media, people are wonderfully celebratory of their children's attainment. And I regularly breeze through Facebook and Twitter just smiling in delight. So that's it for questions, I think, Chris, and comments.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much, Paul. Particular hashtags people are using on social media
Paul, it depends whether you're looking at the national project or whether you're local to Bradford. We've got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter accounts for both of those. It tends to be hashtag 50 things or hashtag 50 things to do. I'm not the expert on hashtags. Patricia, who's representing our communications and marketing team here with Hannah, would have a more defined answer, I suspect, about which hashtags we should be using, because they're bright young things. Lovely.
I think that's is Patricia able to just jump in and just share anything about hashtags and social media just before we bring things to a close? Patricia, are you able to jump onto the call?
Hi everyone. We're actually running a campaign on our 3rd birthday, which is coming up very soon. So we're going to use hashtag 50 things turns 3. But on a general note, we use hashtag 50 things to do before you're 5. And all the other local authority partners that we have, they jump on that bandwagon and they share their pictures and pictures of their kids, which is really nice to see. So yeah, we also have hashtag thing of the week, which we share weekly on our social media, and that just gives parents ideas on what to do with the 50 things in the app. And that's on our Twitter and LinkedIn, and our partner local authorities have social media as well, so you can find that on there. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's pretty much it for today. Just a positive reminder at the end of today to tell you that on the 9th of June we have our next webinar, next 50 Things webinar, and just to let you know, we've got some a really great lineup there, including Professor John Wright, who is director of the Bradford Institute for Health Research, and featured on the BBC radio for quite a high-profile colleague, virologist, and done some fantastic work driving forward the Centre for Applied Education Research as well in Bradford. Really excited to hear him speak at our next webinar. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending today, and we'll be in contact with you. Copies of the recording will also be sent out to you today, later on this week, I should say, and you'll be able to share them with colleagues who've not been able to attend today. Thanks a lot for your time, everyone. Have a good rest of the day.
And terrible jaws. I have terrible teeth. And terrible teeth. Good, mix in. Mix, mix, mix. Mama's bubble. Wow. Bubble. Mix, mix, mix. Sometimes with big elephants and big brown bear.
And what happened?
And a big brown bear.
Tell Molly.
Big brown mouse.
Wow, that was a big jump.
Shall we do something? Oh, we could splash. Put our hand in. Oh, mixing.